Hi, welcome. It is time for a new video, and I am thinking about doing something a little bit differently this time, something that I haven't totally done before, and that is looking at the books that I actually read last month and kind of talking about what I liked and didn't like about them. I usually just share my TBR and then maybe talk about some of the books I've read in other videos, but I never consistently kind of go back and talk about like if I finished things and if I liked them. And I like that idea. I think that I want to do that because sometimes I feel like when I share things in a post or if I share them in my stories on Instagram, it's limited. Maybe they're not full thoughts. They're kind of they're not captions. They're quick bullet points of what I either liked or what it was about or what I didn't like. So I was thinking that maybe we could spend some time talking about the July reading that I did or didn't do and sharing with you some of the thoughts I had about the books that I did finish. In case you don't really remember, July was kind of a hot mess of a TBR that I selected, and I am very regretful of some of the decisions that I made, and it's fine. I read a couple of books from it that I'm going to talk about, but it was overwhelming to me, the content that I put together for all at once, instead of spreading it out a little bit more. And so I think that knowing and anticipating that I was not going to really enjoy what I had set myself up to read then led for me to struggle throughout July and really just be like laissez-faire about how like what I was reading, how I was reading. I mean, there were numerous days where I didn't read because I could not invest myself in what I was trying to accomplish. So that's just kind of a brief overview of what July was for me. It was a hot mess. There's really no other way to explain it. So let's talk about the books that I successfully finished in the month of July and my thoughts and feelings about them. The first book that I read is Biographic Bowie, and this is by Flavell, I believe. I read this in a day. It was the first book I read in July. I read it in a day on a Sunday during reading sprints. It is a very short book and it is all graphic based. It was awesome. It was so cool. Kara sent this to me as a gift and it was perfect. It was like a great first book for July. I am a huge David Bowie fan, in case you have not really been around to see some of my David Bowie love that I have. So this was just really cool to see some of the facts that I know and love in a graphic format. There is one fact that Kara and I went back and forth about whether or not it's true, because we both have heard multiple versions of how so David Bowie's eyes are like two different sizes and they're kind of two different colors because of the sizing. And there are two different stories behind why his eyes are that way. The first is that he was punched by a fellow classmate in the eye. The second story is that he was playing in like a hay bale or hay pile and a piece of straw stuck him in the eye. And I have always seen more of the hay story than the punch story, so I don't know how much I believe that fact, but the rest of it was really cool. It was really enjoyable. I loved having a very colorful, fast read to start off the month, and then it kind of went downhill from there. The second book that I read, this is the first struggle book, was The Winter Gust by Pam Jenoff, and I will be very upfront and clear that I am going to have to spoil this book in order to discuss its review. So if you need to skip on ahead, please feel free to do what you need to do. This is a story that takes place in Poland and it accomplished one of the Pop Sugar prompts. I don't remember which one off the top of my number-wise. I don't remember. It's the prompt about a country you'd like to visit in 2021. Anyway, it takes place in Poland during World War II, and there are twin sisters who are pretty much in charge of their 4 younger siblings that they have. Their father has passed. Their mom is in a mental hospital. They are just kind of in rural Poland doing what they need to survive as the Germans are coming in and beginning to occupy. The protagonist, Helena, finds a US soldier, Sam, after he has fallen out of an airplane in an accident being shot down by the Germans. And she starts to help him, which is fine. Like, the story was kind of interesting up to that point. There are a couple of things that happen later in the book where I just struggled. The first, her twin sister Ruth knows that this is going on. She's not happy about it, but she knows that this is something that is happening. And she, at one point, I don't remember how, but ends up in the abandoned church where Sam is. Sam doesn't realize that they are almost identical twins. And so when Ruth comes in, he thinks that she is Helena, and she is not, and she does not deny it. And there is some adult love that happens between the two of them. And she just kind of lays there and takes it, and it becomes this secret between her, and then like Sam later disappears. But it's not like a love triangle, but it's like this weird relationship that forms out of the whole thing. I had started to film an adult reading vlog to like keep me motivated reading, and all I did was complain during it. So I don't want to dwell too much on it, but it was an uncomfortable scenario for me. And then she keeps that hidden from her sister. And then later in the book, she's pregnant with Sam's child, but then there's, at the very end in the epilogue, and I don't know if I have misread this and am misunderstanding what happened, but she like gives birth very prematurely, because the timeline doesn't make sense in my head, to this child who then Sam finds out is his and like takes him under his wing, and then later on goes and finds Helena. But like, she doesn't ever know about it. It's super bizarre. It was like kind of a 3-star, and that brought it down to a 1-star for me. I just could not get behind it. The scenario was so strange to me, and I just did not care for it at all. I did not have very nice things to say to it about it. I don't know if I will try something else from this author, but my friend Michaela has said that she does enjoy this author, and maybe I will try it again in the future. I gave it a 1, and I'm just gonna leave it at that for now. After that terrible read, I needed something to break up what I was reading, and I was doing a secret reading vlog where I was reading like my friend Sandy, and I was comparing books that she had rated as a 5-star to see if I felt like they were also 5 stars. This is Starfish. This is by Lisa Fipps. It is a novel in verse about an 11-year-old girl who is considered obese. And it is all about body positivity, and it is about her confidence and her finding her identity and the relationship that she has with her parents and her family and her friends and the bullying that she experiences at school. It was hard to read at some points, especially when there's an acknowledgement in the back of the book where the author says that the things that were said to our protagonist were things that had been said to her at some point in her life. And there are some cruel things that are said, and you just cannot believe that someone would have the audacity to say those kinds of things to somebody else, not knowing their situation, not knowing their scenario. Highly recommend this book. It was definitely a 5 out of 5 for me. It was really, really good. I really enjoyed it. I think it is a fun, not necessarily fun. It was fun. There were fun parts to it, but it is a really solid middle grade read when discussing these kinds of topics. I really enjoyed it, and I think that a lot of my students will also enjoy it come the fall. Up next, I read Commonwealth by Ann Patchett, and this I also read for the Pop Sugar Reading Challenge. I don't remember the number. I'm not very organized today, but it was the prompt where someone works at your dream or current job, and this doesn't really fit, but I'm making it fit because one of the characters, it's not the protagonist, but one of the characters is a writer with a published book, and I would love to write a book. I think that would be awesome. So I kind of wedged that in there because I already had this copy. This book takes place over 5 decades, but it's not chronological. It very much is nonlinear. It bounces all around in those 5 decades. It is about 2 families who become one blended family, and it focuses a lot on the kids and the mischief that they get into and some of the relationships that they have with each other and how they've grown up with this unique situation of their families. I found it a little bit more pleasurable than reading The Winter Guest, but I don't know how to explain how I feel about this book because it just, and I think this is where I've kind of talked before about adult fiction. I don't get it a lot of the time. It makes me feel like a dumb reader when I read it, and there's, these books are like so hyped up and they win these awards, and I'm just like, I don't know why. Like, what was good about it? I mean, it was good. It was a fast read. There were parts that I enjoyed. There were parts that I thought were really crummy, as in any book, but it was okay. I would not say it was exceptional. It was a story about a family. There was very little plot that moved the story forward. There was like one thing that really kind of, you find out at the end about a situation that happens with the kids. It was minimal though. It was so small compared to the rest of the story that just kind of followed them and how they like became adults and still kind of relied on each other, and it was a 3-star read. Okay, and then in July, I prepared for August Teachergram Takeover Reading Challenge, which fulfills the Pop Sugar reading prompt, a book that takes place in multiple countries. So this takes place in Miami to start in the United States, and then it transfers over to Haiti. This book is about Alaine and her family, who both of her parents met when they lived in Haiti. They grew up together. They ended up getting married. They moved to Miami. Her father is a therapist, I think it said, and her mom has this politics show through GNN instead of CNN, where she is never present. She's in DC. She's always interviewing politicians and famous people, and so she doesn't really have a relationship with her mom. It feels very business-like. There's like business transaction almost kind of thing. So there's a whole situation that ends up happening where Alaine is tasked to do a project about Haiti, and it kind of spirals out of control. There's a situation with her mom that then keeps coming up from other students at school who are not being very kind about the situation, and Elaine's blood starts to boil. And so she puts together this very dramatic presentation, and it ends up causing some trouble where she almost gets expelled. They decide, her father and her mother pay a lot of money to the private school that she goes to. He comes in and kind of talks with the nuns and settles them down, and she's just going to be suspended, but she needs to do some community service work while she's in Haiti with her mom. While she's there, her aunt, who is her mom's twin sister, she is not only the Ministry of Tourism for Haiti, but she also runs this non-for-profit organization called Patron Pal. And what it does is people can send money to families, kids specifically. You get like set up with a kid to send money to their families to help them get a better education and to help them get supplies and to pay for some of their schooling. And so that's like a big part of it. And Alaine is volunteering at Patron Pal to help in any way that they need while she's there to kind of redeem herself. A big part of this story is about the curse that follows the family. So there is a lot of cultural-esque kind of voodoo. I don't have a better terminology for it at this point, but that happens. They're trying to break this family curse that has been on them for generations since the Haitian Revolution. And Alaine gets kind of caught up in this whole thing, trying to break the curse. There is a lot of mixed media in this, which I thought was really cool. I like that blend sometimes, where sometimes she's typing as a blog post, sometimes she is reading letters from family members, sometimes it is articles that have been published about her mom. So that was really cool to have that different blend. But sometimes it was a little confusing of where you were in the timeline of the story, because a lot of the time a situation would happen and you didn't know how it happened, why it happened. You just knew that something happened, and then later on it was better explained. So there was a little bit of like jumping around and trying to fill in the pieces while you were waiting for it to be explained to you later on. There's a little bit of a romance in here. Not anything huge. There's like just a little bit of flirting back and forth with a boy who works at Patron Pal. And then it just kind of ends. I felt like the conclusion to it was like very fast and just done. But there was a lot going on in the story at the same time too. So by the end of it, I was kind of relieved that it was just done and there was no further explanation to confuse me further on things. So this was a 3-star. I didn't love it. I didn't hate it. It was good. I didn't love it. There was like nothing that I really loved in July, and that kind of hurts my heart. When I said though that there were absolutely no books that I loved, I lied. There is one book that I really, really, really enjoyed, and I am glad that I had the opportunity to read it this summer because my brain is spinning for come fall. And that is Grading for Equity by Joe Feldman. This is a really interesting book about grading practices, especially in the United States, and like why we do things the way we do. So there are 3 major parts to this book, and it breaks it down a lot by like, what is grading and the history of grading, and like what are practices that we see going on around us already. And then the third part is like, what can we do to have better equitable practices within our classroom for our students that actually make sense and are realistic and not like excruciating to try to figure out how to make it more equitable. I tore this up. I had so many annotations throughout this book. I always hesitate when I'm reading education books because for me, I either love them and they're phenomenal and they will guide my practice, or they fall flat for me and I feel like it's just a repetition of things I already know and it's not anything new that can help me grow as an educator. This, I would love to do a book study with my school and really have some fantastic open conversations about like what our grading practices look like, and are we grading kids in ways that actually make sense? Like there was so much good information here. So for instance, one of the things that I will no longer be doing come fall, I will not be giving zeros. And I have thought about this for a long time, but a lot of the explanations in here just solidified my train of thought on this. You have such a wide grading scale of 0 to 100, but then our failing is like 59 to 0. That's a big gap for kids to be able to like try to catch back up if they're trying to catch back up. So one thing that he suggests is just not putting a grade in there. And I know that there are always a lot of worries about that like they need to see that 0 to kind of be motivated. There's a lot of research that shows that when kids see the 0, it actually unmotivates them even further. It does not motivate them in any way, shape, or form to be like, oh my God, I have a 0, I have to fix it, right? Like, it's a demeaning thing to them, even if they don't recognize that, and it makes them shut down even further. So that was really, really fascinating to me. Something else that he suggests in the book is only putting in grades for your summative stuff. So you could still put stuff in the grade book, but it's a 0% weight. And then the summative stuff is 100. The thing that came up the most in this book that it's going to be like my new mantra this year, are we grading what kids have learned? Not are we grading, did they bring a pencil? Did they come prepared? Are they sitting quietly? Are they following my expectations? That's not an accurate representation of if they're learning something in my room. Are we grading them on their capability of learning? And I think that alone is such a game changer of like not grading crap, which I try not to do anyway, but now I'm really not going to grade any crap because it's not the learning process, right? We want to see them grow as a learner. We don't want to hold them back because they couldn't sit still for 5 seconds, you know? This is just really skimming the surface in a review. I really recommend that everybody gets a copy of it and read it, and I'm really glad that I did. The next book that I'm reading to kind of follow up with this is specifically for an English classroom, and that is Pointless by Sarah M. Zerwin. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how what Joe has said in his can translate specifically into my classroom. So this was the only book that besides Starfish, really, truly, absolutely loved. I'm probably going to buy a copy for as many people as I can afford to buy a copy for of this book because it was really, really good. And I think everyone deserves a copy of this to like really critique the traditional practices that we are so accustomed to. Right, so that, my friends, wraps up what I read in July and my thoughts and feelings about some of the books. It was a mediocre month for me, and that is okay. I am accepting it and I am moving on. And August might be better, it might not be better. We are going to go with the flow on this channel, and I will share with you what I feel like I can share with you. Thank you so much for sticking around and watching this video today. I hope that you like the idea of the wrap-ups. I would love to know your thoughts if it's something that I should definitely keep doing. I think it makes sense to share with you what I was able to read, and that way you can kind of have a little bit better insight if it's something that you also would like to read. And that is all that I have for this video. Thank you as always for watching. Please make sure that if you haven't yet, I do have this available on Instagram and it's available on YouTube. And if you wouldn't mind subscribing on YouTube if you're not already watching there, I would fully appreciate it. I will see you back here with a new video at some point in time. Until then, goodbye.